So the statistics tell us that in 2020, the average cost was $17,000 per asylum seeker per year to the Home Office for the accommodation provided by your three companies. By 2024, that had risen to $41,000 per asylum seeker per year. How do you account for that huge growth? And do you know what proportion of that per asylum seeker per year by 2024 was going in profits to your companies?
Yes, in terms of profit for us, I can only talk for Clear Springs, of course, but our profits on average are around 6.9%. Contractually, we're only allowed to make just over 5% in profit before that's then shared back with the Home Office as part of the profit share mechanism. So anything over and above that amount would go back. So our margins have gone up slightly. We've gone up over the 5 years from around 3-4% to, as I say, around 6.9%, with anything over just over 5 being shared back in terms of profit. I think the other question was around the cost differential between the two, and again, it comes back to that full board, fully catered security services on site versus a self-catering property in community, which is a very, very different prospect, and that's the main reason for the difference.
From Mears' perspective, our profit margin over the existence of the contract is in the region of our announced range of 5 to 6%. I acknowledge that the NAO report contains some figures which are in excess of that range, but I think it's important to note that those figures don't take into account the degree of profit that needs to be paid back in terms of the profit share that Steve alluded to. From Mears' perspective, obviously we operate in 3 regions. Each region is looked at on an independent basis in terms of performance. We have Northern Ireland, Scotland and North East Yorkshire Humber. Of those 3 contracts, we are in profit, if you like, in 2. We are in underage in 1, Scotland. So overall, I think our net margin is in the region of 5 to 6%, and we have in the region of 13.8 million to come back in profit share. I think that figure is the figure that we've given to Home Office, and it's currently being undergoing the audit process.
Ms. Stewart?
Yes, so you asked first of all about how I would what analysis I'd give about why costs have increased. I suppose the big driver there is the growth in the use of hotels, which, as my colleague said, is more expensive than self-catered private rental accommodation. I think as you push out from densely populated urban areas to find accommodation further out to try and create a greater spread, you end up going to areas where the rental costs are higher, where you're dealing with the impact of rurality, increased transportation costs and so on. I'm going to draw on the NAO reported profit, which seems to me to have the greatest validity here, and they assess us as, over the life of the contract, an average of 7% margin on our revenue. We are not yet in scope for profit share at Serco.
In a stormy session that underscored the deepening crisis in Britain's asylum accommodation strategy, MPs erupted in frustration this week after representatives from companies running the government's controversial asylum hotels appeared before Parliament and failed to provide the clarity many were desperately seeking. The setting was a Commons Home Affairs Committee meeting, but the mood more closely resembled a courtroom showdown. Emotions flared as MPs grilled private contractors over ballooning costs, alleged profiteering, and the lack of transparency surrounding the government's multi-billion-pound agreement to house asylum seekers in temporary hotel accommodations. Labour MP Chris Murray, who led one of the most impassioned interrogations of the afternoon, said he was beyond furious with the patronizing and evasive nature of the answers received. Murray, addressing the committee after a pointed exchange, accused the firms of treating Parliament like an inconvenience and offering pre-packaged talking points instead of real accountability. The cost of the asylum system has skyrocketed, with government figures now placing the expense at oversight million per day, much of that funneled into hotel contracts with private firms. But when asked to account for the scale of the cost, representatives from the involved companies offered what many MPs saw as hollow justifications, citing logistical challenges and duty of care obligations without providing any substantive financial breakdowns. The hearing comes amid mounting political pressure on the Home Office to explain why more sustainable long-term solutions have not been implemented. A backlog of over 100,000 pending asylum claims and a shortage of housing stock have made temporary hotels the default option. But critics argue that this is a manufactured crisis, one driven by years of policy neglect, knee-jerk responses, and lack of political will. The fallout from the hearing is likely to reverberate across Westminster. Several committee members are calling for a full parliamentary inquiry into the Home Office's use of private contractors, with some suggesting that certain deals may warrant scrutiny from the National Audit Office. Meanwhile, public dissatisfaction continues to grow, especially in towns where hotel conversions have sparked community tensions and protests. Local councils complain they are left in the dark until days before hundreds of asylum seekers arrive, while residents voice concerns over safety, transparency, and lack of resources.
So the IR are reporting that the government are looking to partially reverse it and make the announcement as soon as next month. It was one of the first things that the new government announced when they came into office. It has been politically poisonous for them, safe to say. I, along with other journalists, were asking about this in the last couple of weeks. My understanding was we were told that you can't just sort of raise the threshold that people can earn, before you don't qualify because of the complications, the way that it all works, that they couldn't just do that. But the eye is reporting that they are looking at some sort of rollback. And honestly, I don't think it's surprising at all. I think, to be honest, this is inevitable because this isn't going away. People are still furious about this. Labour MPs are furious about it. And the local election results were absolute proof that that Labour landslide that they had, that they thought they've got 10 years, is slipping from their fingers. Now, I was up in Runcorn and Helsby, which, of course, Reform took by 6 votes. What struck me was not a single person mentioned the fact that Mike Amesbury, the previous Labour MP, had been booted out for punching a constituent. They didn't care about that. No one mentioned it. Again and again, people told me they're taking money from pensioners, they're taking money from disabled people. Worth saying too, there'll be a row about disability benefits. Labour MP's not happy about that either.
Certainly, well, just a few more details here coming out in this breaking news story from the iPaper. And first of all, it was because of a focus group. There's a whole conversation there, Catherine Forster. Why on earth does it take a focus group to tell them the blooming obvious? The fact that this went down like a cup of cold sick across the entire nation should have been surely inevitable. And some more of the detail here is whether to increase the £11,500 income threshold, over which pensioners are no longer eligible, or to get rid of it altogether, to go back to where they were. So still some detail, still a breaking news line. If it does happen, it'll be seen as a huge and embarrassing climb down. But I guess they're thinking the damage is done. It can't get any worse.
It will be a climb down. It will be a U-turn, but better that then it will continually. I think there's large numbers of people who voted for Labour. I talked to quite a few of them in Runcorn who, because of this, are just done with Labour. Now, people will often forgive. It's 4 years to the next election and so on. And I think the government's calculation is basically change course now and try to mitigate the damage.
Labour is preparing to reverse its deeply controversial plan to scale back winter fuel payments in what sources describe as a necessary climb down following weeks of public fury and internal dissent. According to reports first detailed by The Independent's Kate Forster, party strategists are now finalizing a rollback of the proposed changes to the winter fuel payment scheme, a decision originally floated as a cost-saving measure but which sparked immediate backlash from pensioners, trade, unions, and even some of Labour's own backbenchers. The decision to quietly float means testing or reducing winter fuel payments was seen by many as a political gamble gone wrong. What began as a trial balloon in internal briefings quickly turned into a full-blown firestorm after pensioners' groups and charities accused Labour of abandoning its social contract with older voters. Winter fuel payments are worth between £100 and £300 per year for households with someone over pension age. Though universal, they have long been seen as a lifeline for vulnerable elderly residents, especially amid ongoing fuel inflation and concerns about heating costs during harsh winters. The backlash was especially damaging for Keir Starmer's team, who had spent the past 6 months courting older voters disillusioned with the Conservatives. Polling showed that trust in Labour's economic stewardship had been rising steadily until the winter fuel fumble. Within days, shadow ministers began walking back the proposal in media interviews, insisting no decisions had been made. But the damage was already done. In a political climate shaped by instability and economic anxiety, Labour's latest reversal may have salvaged some goodwill, but it has also exposed a fault line in the party's strategy. The challenge of balancing modernization with loyalty to its most reliable supporters. If Labour's winter fuel fiasco proves anything, it's that some policy ideas are not just bad politics. They're radioactive.